My new husband forced my stepchild to starve for a week, so I made a life-changing decision.
Hello everyone, enjoy these relaxing moments while you watch.
Just after dawn, Paula finished her night shift at South LA Medical Center. Her entire body was aching, her legs heavy after nearly 12 hours without rest. But what weighed on her heart the most was the sorrowful look in her son Ethan's eyes the previous morning, when he softly asked, "Mom, will I get to eat this afternoon?" Paula returned home and quietly unlocked the door because George, her new husband, hated any noise early in the morning. As she walked into the kitchen, she saw the plate of cold rice still untouched on the dinner table, the one she had asked George to leave for Ethan. There was no sound in the house. She opened her son's bedroom door, and her heart clenched when she saw Ethan curled up under his blanket, face down on the pillow, his small body trembling slightly. "Ethan?" Paula gently touched his shoulder. The boy opened his eyes but said nothing. His face was pale, his lips dry and cracked, and his eyes dull, making her gasp in alarm. "Did you eat anything? I told your stepdad to leave you some food." Ethan looked at his mother and then shook his head slightly. "I got punished. Dad said I was being noisy." She turned quickly and walked down to the kitchen, where George was pouring coffee. "You didn't give Ethan dinner?" George didn't look up. His voice was flat, cold as ice. "He was punished for lying. He's just a kid, George. After a whole day at school, he was exhausted. How could you forbid him from eating? You trying to tell me how to be a father?" George slammed the coffee mug on the counter and looked at her. "You're taking his side now." Paula swallowed her anger. This wasn't the first time George had enforced his so-called iron discipline. But Ethan was only 8. How could he possibly endure it? She quietly returned to the bedroom, took a pack of crackers and a milk carton, and sneaked them to her son. Ethan looked at her, a glimmer of fragile hope in his eyes. "Eat, but don't let your dad know." Ethan nodded and began nibbling slowly, as if afraid of shattering the fragile moment around them. That afternoon, after George left for work, Paula called her best friend Emily, a fellow nurse originally from Miami. Emily's voice came through the phone full of worry. "What happened now, Paula?" "George, he didn't let Ethan eat. It's been days. Since Monday. When I asked, he said he was punishing him for being disrespectful." "Good God, 3 days. Are you sure?" "I'm sure. And yesterday, he made him sit out in the sun all afternoon." Emily was silent for a long while. Then she spoke, her voice soft but firm. "Paula, don't you see how dangerous this is? This isn't discipline anymore. This is abuse." Paula gasped. "But he's Ethan's stepfather. I can't just take my son and leave, then I'll get blamed again, Emily. I have no money, no place to stay, and George controls our bank accounts." "You still have Ethan," Emily cut her off. "You're not alone, Paula." Paula pressed her lips together. But doubt had already started to grow in her mind. In the following days, she silently watched George's behavior more closely, and increasingly saw just how wrong things were. George grew colder toward Ethan. He wouldn't let the boy speak during meals, banned him from smiling, from asking about homework. Just dropping a spoon or sneezing was enough to make George glare and bark, "Quiet." One evening, while Paula was washing dishes, she heard Ethan crying softly in his room. She rushed in. Ethan was sitting curled under his desk, hands clutching his head. "What's wrong, honey?" "Dad. Dad said I'm a nuisance. He said if I don't behave, he'll give me away." Paula clenched her fists, trying not to cry. That night, after George went to bed, she opened her laptop and began searching. Forums for abused women. Posts, comments filled with fear but also stories from survivors who stood up and protected their children. They wrote, "Record evidence. Prepare carefully. And never let him know your plan." The next morning, Paula quietly went to an electronics store. She bought a small hidden camera disguised as a wall socket and installed it in the corner of Ethan's room where it could see the bed and the door. Over the next 3 days, she waited patiently. She acted like everything was normal, smiled when George asked, "You okay?" But inside, she was trembling. Then, the first video was recorded. Tuesday evening. Ethan was reading on his bed when George walked in, holding a sandal. His voice rang out on the recording. "What the hell are you doing?" "I'm reading," Ethan stammered. "I didn't give you permission to read at night. That's wasting my electricity." Without another word, George raised his hand. The sandal struck Ethan's shoulder. The boy fell onto the bed, clutching his face. Paula jumped from her seat. She couldn't watch anymore. Her heart pounded, her breathing was ragged. The video was real. She had seen with her own eyes her husband hitting her son. She closed the laptop, walked into the bedroom, and stared at George snoring peacefully as if nothing had ever happened. "My child is living in hell," Paula told herself. "And I'm the only one who can get him out." But how? George controlled all the bank accounts. Her nurse salary, after rent, left her with barely $300 a month. If she left now, where would she go? The next morning, as she was about to call Emily for advice, her phone showed an error, unable to make call. She tried again. Still nothing. Her SIM card had been disabled. "George!" Paula shouted. "What did you do to my phone?" George stepped out of the bathroom, towel in hand. "I saw you texting someone shady. So I cut the SIM. If you've got nothing to hide, you don't need to contact anyone. You have no right." Paula trembled with rage. "I'm your husband, the one who supports this household. Try running off, I dare you. The law will say you're unfit to raise a child. What do you have? No money, no home, no family nearby." Paula stepped back, as if each word had slapped her in the face. Since that argument about the SIM card, the atmosphere in the house grew suffocating. Paula felt watched with every step. She was no longer allowed to call or text even Emily, the one person she trusted. George demanded to see her weekly work schedule, with exact times. "I just want to know you're safe," George said. But his eyes didn't show concern, they were the eyes of a warden. Every morning, George checked her bag, what she brought with her. He even forbade her from carrying a private notebook. Whenever she wanted to go out with Ethan, George found a reason to say no. "It's too hot outside. The kid shouldn't go out." "Where are you taking him?" "To your mom's again." "I told you, I don't want him near your family." The last time Paula tried to take Ethan to visit his grandparents just 30 minutes away by bus, George blocked the doorway and snarled. "You trying to ruin everything, Paula? That kid doesn't need people sweet-talking him. He needs discipline, not that cheap emotional crap." Paula looked at George, unable to believe this was the man she once loved. Every time Ethan did something George didn't like, no matter how small, he was punished immediately. One day, Ethan accidentally spilled orange juice on the dining table. George made him stand outside on the balcony in the blazing sun for over an hour. Paula begged and pleaded until George finally let him back inside, but only after Ethan collapsed from exhaustion. Ethan gradually changed. He no longer laughed or played. His eyes became vacant. He startled easily at loud noises, often talked in his sleep, and began having nightmares. One night, in the middle of a scream, Paula rushed into his room and found Ethan sitting upright, drenched in sweat, shouting. "Don't lock me out there. Please don't. Mommy, help me." She held her son tightly in her arms, gently stroking his hair, tears falling down her cheeks. "I'm here. Mommy's here." The next morning, George glanced at Paula with suspicion. "You let him complain to you again? You're making him weak. He's just a child, George. He needs to be loved." George scoffed, And your love is supposed to make him a man? No. I'm teaching him discipline. So he doesn't grow up into a spineless weakling. Paula was speechless. She didn't know how to argue with someone who had no concept of emotion. In the following days, George tightened his control over finances. Every time Paula needed to buy something, even just a few dollars for Ethan to get crayons, she had to ask for permission and explain the exact reason. Money doesn't grow on trees, Paula, George said, even though he made 3 times more than she did. I told you, from now on all expenses need my approval first. Paula couldn't believe she was living in the 21st century yet being treated like a dependent with no autonomy. Every month, her salary was deposited into their joint account, a bank account for which George held the primary card. The one time she dared to withdraw cash without telling him, George found out immediately. What did you take this money out for? You planning to run away? No. I just wanted to buy some books for Ethan. Liar. Don't think I don't know what you're plotting. Paula started to feel like a ghost in her own home. Every breath, every step was watched. She couldn't talk to her son for too long. George would suddenly walk in, pretend to be concerned, and then find a reason to separate them. One night, Ethan whispered to her. Mom, I don't want to stay here anymore. Why, sweetie? I'm scared of Dad. He doesn't like me. He says I'm useless. Her heart ached. She hugged her son tightly. That's not true. You're the most wonderful thing that's ever happened to me. The next morning, Paula wrote a small letter and hid it in a drawer in the nurse's room at her workplace, the medical center. In the letter, she described Ethan's situation and what George had done. She didn't sign it. She only wrote that if one day she disappeared, whoever found the letter should contact the police and find a way to save Ethan. A kind of haunting fear crept into her mind every night. She couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw George dragging Ethan away, saw her son crying, saw herself screaming in helplessness. One day, Emily came to visit her at the medical center, pretending to check in on work but actually to hand her a new phone. Don't use your old number anymore. He's definitely monitoring it. This one's a burner SIM, only you and I know it. If something urgent happens, call me immediately. Got it? Paula's eyes welled with tears. Emily, I'm scared. I'm really scared. If he finds out. You're not the one doing something wrong. He is. You need to collect more evidence as much as possible. But Ethan, he's about to break. He's not himself anymore. That's why you have to be strong, Paula. There's no more time. That day, back home, Paula mustered the courage to reopen the hidden camera footage. The videos made her nauseous, George cruelly taking away Ethan's food and throwing it into the trash right in front of him, forcing the boy to kneel for getting grammar wrong on an English worksheet. The worst was another clip that nearly made Paula collapse. In it, George walked into the room while Ethan was playing with building blocks. Without a word, he kicked over the toy box and slapped the boy across the face. Ethan fell back, his cheek flushed red. The boy didn't cry. He just looked at his father with a look of despair. How many times do I have to tell you? No playing before finishing your homework. Do you want me to send you out to sleep in the yard all night? Paula clutched her head, her hands trembling violently. George was a monster. Nothing less. She made a decision, she had to keep Ethan within her sight at all times. For the moment, she took 3 days off work, citing illness. George was irritated but didn't stop her. He seemed busy with a new construction project. During those 3 days, she stayed home entirely to care for her son. Ethan slowly relaxed when he wasn't being yelled at. But the moment George entered the house, the boy would shrink away like a small animal that had been beaten too many times. One night, George discovered that Paula hadn't locked Ethan's door as he had ordered. He exploded with rage. I told you to lock his door every night. Are you trying to help him run away? He's a human being, not a prisoner. He's a child, and he needs to learn obedience. If you won't do it, I will. That sentence sent chills down Paula's spine. A vague but overwhelming fear gripped her chest. She understood, if she hesitated any longer, she would lose her child. Forever. From the moment George threatened to do it for her, if she didn't lock Ethan's door, Paula knew her time was running out. Every action, every word, every glance from George was now a silent threat. She had to stay sharp. She couldn't slip. The next day, while George was out at a construction site and Ethan napping, Paula opened her laptop again. She carefully reviewed the video clips from the past 3 weeks. Over 17 files, each ranging from 2 to 10 minutes, captured moments no mother should ever have to see. In one clip, George yanked Ethan out of bed just because the boy was talking in his sleep. He slapped him and forced him to stand against the wall until he nearly fainted. In another, George dumped an entire bowl of porridge on the floor because Ethan didn't finish one piece of carrot. None of the clips showed violence that would be considered fatal, but they were full of psychological torment, like 1,000 tiny needles stabbed into the same spot until there was no more feeling. Paula saved all the videos to a small USB drive and hid it deep in a cotton jar placed on the highest bathroom shelf somewhere George would never touch. She also backed them up to an email account created solely for this purpose, one not linked to any device in the house. One day, while she was cooking, she heard Ethan vomiting in his room. She ran in and found the boy crouched on the floor, trembling. In his hand was a broken bowl, one that George had instructed to be cleaned and ready for breakfast. Blood oozed from a cut on his palm. I'm sorry. I dropped it. It's okay, baby. It's okay. I'm here, Paula said, hugging Ethan and pulling out a cloth to tend to his wound, her hands shaking. She had just finished bandaging him when the front door opened. George. Paula immediately pulled Ethan behind her. George saw the broken bowl, his lips tightening. He caused trouble again. It was me, Paula answered quickly. I slipped and dropped it. George stared at her, eyes filled with suspicion. Then, without a word, he walked to their bedroom and slammed the door shut. That night, Paula texted Emily using the burner phone. Emily, I need a lawyer. Someone trustworthy. As soon as possible. Emily replied almost instantly. I have a close friend named Daniel Harris, a lawyer at Grant Legal Services. I'll arrange for you to meet him privately. But remember, George must not know. Monday morning, Paula told George she had a general health checkup appointment at the city hospital. George simply grunted and didn't ask more. At exactly 9 a.m., Paula arrived at Attorney Daniel's office, a man in his mid-30s, tall, professional, with a calm, steady gaze. Emily gave me a brief idea, Daniel began. But I need you to tell me everything. Paula did. Every video clip, every injury, every threat. Daniel didn't take notes. He just listened, occasionally frowning. And you have evidence? I do. Video footage, injury records, and my personal journal. Daniel nodded. You've done exactly the right thing. But remember, someone like George won't give up control easily. I know, Paula replied, her voice shaking. But if I do nothing, I'll lose my son. Or he'll slowly die inside from fear. Daniel looked at her and said firmly. Then this is where we begin. He instructed Paula on how to collect more documentation, keeping a detailed journal of events, times, specific behaviors, taking photos of every bruise or injury, preserving all medical visit records from her workplace. She left his office anxious but with a glimmer of hope. Daniel was the first person since Emily to make her feel like she wasn't alone. But that hope hadn't even taken root when another storm struck. That evening, George discovered that Paula had locked the drawer in her filing cabinet, something she had never done before. He stormed in, eyes blazing with suspicion. What are you hiding in here? It's patient records. The medical center requires them to be kept confidential. Don't lie. You're hiding something, aren't you? George tore the room apart but didn't find anything. Paula had already managed to tuck the USB drive into her purse. I swear, if I find out you're up to something, I'll charge you with kidnapping, George growled. And I have enough money to hire a lawyer who'll make sure you never get custody. Even if you're the boy's biological mother. Paula bit her lip and didn't respond. She knew that with someone like George, decency meant nothing. After that day, George began checking Paula's purse every night. He read her messages and secretly reviewed her browser history. Paula had to become more discreet than ever. Every time she sent information to Daniel or Emily, she immediately cleared her history and added dual password protection to the secret email account. One morning, George declared, "From now on, I'll be taking Ethan to school. You don't need to worry. Saves time." Paula panicked. George had never cared about Ethan's schooling. He hated crowded places, hated noisy kids. His sudden desire to escort Ethan could only mean one thing, even tighter control. "But I want to speak with his teacher about his homework." I said, "It's not necessary. You just take care of your own stuff." That afternoon, Paula tried to arrive at school at dismissal time to talk to Ethan's teacher, Ms. Mary Smith, a middle-aged woman from Georgia with a gentle personality. "Miss Paula? Is something wrong? I just wanted to ask, how's Ethan been lately? Has he shown any strange behavior at school?" Mary Smith looked at her and softly replied, "He's very well behaved, but much quieter than before. I saw him crying in the bathroom once, but he wouldn't say why. I was going to tell you, but lately it's been his father picking him up." Paula tried to hide the fear in her expression. "Thank you. I'll keep an eye on him." That night, Paula held her son in her arms and gently asked, "If there was one place you wished you could go, where would it be?" Ethan didn't need to think. "The beach. Remember, Mom? You promised we'd go last summer, but we never did." "I promise, this time I'll keep my word," Paula said, and in her eyes, for the first time, there wasn't just fear but determination. She knew if she didn't leave George soon, that promise would never come true. That night, a storm rolled in unexpectedly. Not a gentle autumn drizzle, but a violent thunderstorm, rain pouring down in sheets, thunder and lightning shaking the southern Los Angeles sky. Paula sat in silence in the living room, clutching a pillow to her chest, staring out the foggy window. Every lightning flash made her flinch. George got home late, nearly 10 p.m., soaking wet and furious from traffic. Ethan was curled up in the kitchen corner, packing his schoolbooks into his bag. "Why aren't you asleep yet?" George barked, his voice as harsh as always. I was going to go after I finished packing." Before the boy could finish, George stormed over and flung the backpack aside. A few books scattered across the floor, the plastic folder torn. "You think you can defy me? I said sleep by 9. Stop it." Paula jumped to her feet. "He's just a child. You can't." "Shut your mouth." George growled, his eyes flashing with rage. "You trying to teach me how to be a father?" "I'm trying to teach you how to be human." Silence. In that moment, the two stood face to face like two repelling magnets pushed apart by force, but unable to break away. Paula saw George's fist tighten. But instead of hitting her, he turned and grabbed Ethan's arm, yanking him toward the balcony. "You need to relearn how to behave. I'll teach you a lesson you'll never forget." "George! Don't!" Paula ran after him. But he had already opened the balcony door and dragged Ethan out into the torrential rain. The wind howled, and thunder roared like an explosion overhead. Paula followed, but George blocked her. "If you take one more step, I'll throw him out onto the street right now. You decide." "George, he's 8. It's storming, he's soaked. He'll get sick." That's the lesson. So he'll remember next time. You're a monster. Paula screamed. George didn't respond. He slammed the balcony door shut and locked it. Ethan stood outside, curled into a corner, rain pounding his face, hair drenched, his little body trembling from the cold. Paula returned to the bedroom and collapsed onto the bed, clutching her head. She couldn't break down the door. George was watching her every move like a hawk. If she made one wrong move now, he could strike the final blow, drag her to court, claim she was mentally unstable, and take away her custody rights. So all she could do was wait. Wait until George fell asleep. Every second was torture. Every tick of the clock sliced into her like a knife. She quietly opened the door and peeked out. George was lying on the couch with his laptop, watching a soccer match, eyes half shut, head nodding. Near midnight, he finally dozed off. Paula tiptoed over and slipped the keys from George's pocket. It took her nearly 5 minutes to turn the lock silently. When the balcony door finally creaked open, a blast of cold air hit her face. Ethan. She rushed out and nearly slipped. The boy was still there, curled up, eyes shut tight. Baby. Baby. She scooped him into her arms, his skin ice cold. Ethan didn't respond. He only whimpered faintly. Oh God, his lips are cracked, Paula whispered, wrapping him in a towel. She carried him to the bedroom, laid him on the bed, and gently dried his hair. Then she ran to boil warm water. Her hands were shaking so hard she had to use her phone's flashlight instead of turning on any lights. George might wake up. When she placed a warm towel on Ethan's forehead, she felt something wrong. She searched her bag for the thermometer. 103.6 degrees Fahrenheit, 39.8 degrees Celsius. What do I do? She sobbed. I'm so sorry, baby. Ethan moaned softly, lips barely moving. Mom, don't leave me outside again. The words pierced her chest like a blade. Paula hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. By dawn, his fever still hadn't gone down. Paula knew if she didn't take him to the hospital, the fever could cause dangerous complications. But how? George was sleeping in the living room. There was no way out without alerting him. She opened the burner phone and texted Emily. Help me. Ethan has a high fever. I'm scared to call an ambulance. George will find out. What do I do? 3 minutes later, Emily replied. Give him paracetamol for now. I'll have Daniel send someone to pick you up. Don't worry. You're not alone. Paula did as instructed, slipping the pill into Ethan's mouth and waiting for the fever to ease. At 7 a.m., George was still asleep. Paula quickly changed Ethan's clothes, packed a few things into a small backpack, a few outfits, his ID, vaccination records, medical log, the USB. She zipped the backpack, wrapped a scarf around Ethan's neck, and laid him down, pretending he was still asleep. At exactly 7:45, there was a knock on the door. George groggily sat up and rubbed his eyes. Who is it? Probably the paperboy, Paula answered quickly. George shrugged and lazily headed to the bathroom. Paula opened the back door. A man in his mid-30s stood there in a long coat and hood. He held out a badge. I'm a colleague of Dr. Emily. I'm here to check on Ethan as requested. Thank you, please, hurry. Within minutes, the man faked a medical check, then gave Paula a slight nod. She knew he was the one Daniel had sent. Stay calm. You have 3 minutes. Where's the bag? Here. Take it. When I signal, carry the boy straight to the car. It's waiting at the end of the alley. Don't look back. Paula nodded, holding Ethan tightly. When the man gave the sign, she opened the door and stepped into the chilly morning wind without looking back even once. Only when the car pulled away from the narrow alley leading to that gray house did Paula finally exhale. Her heart was still racing, her hands icy cold. Ethan nestled against her chest, still weak, but finally asleep. Paula whispered. I'm sorry. I won't let anyone hurt you again. I swear. The car carrying Paula and Ethan stopped in front of an old apartment in a quiet residential area on the west side of town. The apartment belonged to a friend of Emily's, Mrs. Helen, a widowed woman who lived alone and was always willing to help women in distress. Consider this your home, Helen said gently when she saw Paula's hesitation. Emily told me everything. You're not alone. Paula thanked her with teary eyes. Helen didn't ask many questions, nor did she show pity. She simply left a bowl of hot soup and a piece of paper with the Wi-Fi password, then quietly stepped away, leaving the mother and son in a makeshift but rare moment of peace. Ethan's fever hadn't completely gone down, but he was able to eat a few spoonfuls of porridge. Paula sat by his side all night, not sleeping. Her eyes stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. Had George found out? Had he called the police? Would he do something insane? The next morning, her burner phone buzzed. It was Emily. Paula, where are you? Are you okay? I'm okay, just barely. Ethan still has a fever, but he's better. George called the medical center this morning. He said you kidnapped your son. He even asked the supervisor about your shift schedule. Oh God, he's going to find me. No, he won't. Daniel and I gave them a heads up. We locked all access to your shifts, your current address, and any internal records with your name. But what if he reports it to the police? Daniel's handling that. You just need to stay put, keep in touch, and prepare your documents. Do you have everything you need? Paula looked at the backpack by the bed, the USB with video footage, the medical records, photos of Ethan's injuries. I do. But I don't know where to begin. I'll have Daniel come see you this afternoon. Stay calm. This is a legal battle now, not just a matter of escape. At exactly 3 p.m., Daniel arrived. He sat at the old dining table, opened his laptop, and plugged in a USB Paula handed him. Images of pain filled the screen: George slapping Ethan, George dumping food, George threatening. Daniel watched in silence for 20 minutes. Then he looked up. This is compelling evidence. But we need more: Ethan's medical records, and if possible, a statement from a teacher or neighbor. I might be able to ask Ms. Mary Smith, his teacher. She once saw Ethan crying in the bathroom. But I don't know if she'd be willing to testify. Let me talk to her. For now, you need to do something important: write a detailed statement. As clear and thorough as possible. Paula wrote through the night. Every line felt like a scratch across her soul. She wrote about the first time George slapped their son, the first time Ethan had to sleep on the balcony, the first time she heard him whisper in his sleep, "Mom, I'm scared." The next morning, Daniel returned with 3 printed copies of the complaint, one for the court, one for the police, and one for Child Protective Services. We'll submit them all at once. From now on, the law will protect you. I'm scared George will do something crazy. He'll be warned, maybe even detained. Most importantly, a temporary restraining order will be filed. All you have to do is stay safe and wait for the court's decision. Paula nodded, but she still felt uneasy. She knew George. He wasn't the type to stay quiet when cornered. 3 days after the filings, George called. He called the burner phone Paula had forgotten to turn off the ringer. The ringtone echoed in the small room. Paula looked at the screen. It only showed an unknown number. But her heart instantly knew who it was. You think you can run? George's voice was low, rough, and cold. You'll end up with nothing. The court can rule whatever it wants, but don't forget I have money, I have connections. I'll take the boy back. No matter what. George, you've done enough. He's my son. Please, stop. Stop. No. You're the one who needs to stop. I swear, if you make one more move, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. And that boy, he'll never have peace again. Beep, beep, beep. Paula let go of the phone, her hands ice cold. Ethan was a few feet away, drawing on paper. He hadn't heard the call, but the worry in his eyes said he sensed something. Mom, who was that? No one, sweetheart. Paula swallowed hard. I'm sorry. I'll protect you. No matter what. That night, Paula fell asleep with her eyes wide open. She dreamed of George breaking into the house, ripping Ethan from her arms, burning all the videos, all the evidence, all her years of motherhood. The next morning, Daniel texted. We've got a hearing scheduled. Get ready. This is your chance. But it came with bad news. George had hired one of the most expensive lawyers in the area. He filed a countersuit against Paula for abusing her parental rights, causing psychological harm to the child, and kidnapping a minor. It felt like the ground crumbled beneath her. He's lying. I was protecting my son. I know. And I'll prove it. But we have to be careful with every word during the hearing. Ethan started having more nightmares. He would mutter in his sleep, always saying things like, "It's not my fault. I'll be good." Paula cried quietly, not because of George anymore, but because of the slow, quiet destruction the man had inflicted on that small, innocent soul. 1 week later, they had an appointment with a child protection agency psychologist. George was not allowed to attend. It was a condition Daniel had insisted on. The psychologist's name was Laura Evans, a woman in her early 40s, with steady yet empathetic eyes. "Ethan, would you like to draw something?" Laura asked gently. Ethan nodded. Paula sat in the corner of the room, hands clenched, heart tight. The boy began to draw a house. But the house had no roof. Inside it, only a mother hugging her child. Outside, there was a large black figure, banging on the door. Laura asked. "Who is that black figure?" Ethan was silent. After a moment, he whispered. "My stepdad. The one who makes Mom cry. The one who scares me." After the session with Laura Evans, Paula was told to wait for an official evaluation report to be included in the court documents. But deep down, she already knew, Ethan's drawings, the sadness in his eyes, his whisper, "the one who makes Mom cry," were already the most damning indictment of George. But George didn't stop. 2 days later, his lawyer submitted a petition directly to the court, a request for temporary custody of Ethan, claiming Paula was illegally detaining him and interfering with the father-son bond. The petition included a shocking claim: the defendant shows signs of psychological instability and has repeatedly obstructed the biological relationship between father and child. Paula's hands trembled as she read the words. Everything seemed to be turning upside down, as if George were the victim, and she the perpetrator. "He's trying to flip the narrative," Daniel slammed the documents on the table. "But he has no evidence. We have everything. I'm afraid the court might let him see Ethan before the case is resolved." "No. Tomorrow, I'll urgently request a temporary no-contact order. And you should prepare to take Ethan in for one last medical check. We need thorough injury documentation." The next morning, Paula brought Ethan to County General Hospital. She didn't dare go to the medical center where she worked, too risky. At exam room number 4, Dr. Christopher Morgan, a middle-aged man from Nashville, examined each scar and lingering bruise on Ethan's body. "The boy shows clear signs of touch aversion and extreme flinch reflex," Christopher noted. "This is typical psychological trauma in abused children." He signed the report, stamped it, and handed Paula a copy. "If you need expert testimony in court, I'll be there." "Thank you, doctor. Thank you so much." On the way home, Paula received a message from Emily. "George just showed up at the medical center. He's looking for you. He even went to the admin office asking about your old schedule." Paula's face went pale. She held Ethan tighter. "Mom, what's wrong?" "Nothing, baby. We're almost free." That night, Daniel sent a message. "The court has accepted the emergency no-contact request. The judge will rule tomorrow morning. Be there on time with Ethan, all documents, medical records, and the USB." That night, Paula didn't sleep. She went through every document, checked each page, organized them in chronological order. Then, she wrote a short letter, just in case the worst happened. "If I cannot appear in court, please read this letter. I am Paula Martin, mother of Ethan. I have been mentally abused for 3 years, and my son is a direct victim of George Dawson. I am not running away. I am trying to survive." The next morning, the sky was overcast, and the wind howled through every street. Paula held Ethan's hand tightly as they walked into the Los Angeles County Civil Court, where their future would be decided. In the waiting room, Daniel was already there, holding a thick folder of documents. "Are you okay?" "I have to be. For my son." The door opened. A court clerk called their names. Paula picked up Ethan and walked in, not glancing over to the other side where George sat with his lawyer, his face cold as stone. The hearing was closed to the public. The judge was Deborah Carter, a woman around 50, with a stern but not heartless gaze. She listened carefully to Daniel's every word, then requested to see the video on the USB. The courtroom fell silent, only the speaker echoed with images. Clips played one by one, Ethan being pushed off the bed, Ethan standing in the rain, George yelling in the boy's face, throwing food onto the floor. Paula clenched her hands, eyes never leaving her son sitting in her lap. George turned his face away. After the video ended, the judge turned to George. "Do you have any response?" George's lawyer stood up, his tone rigid. "Your Honor, these videos were recorded in a private setting without prior consent and may have been edited. Are you denying their authenticity? We believe a tech expert should verify the content." "Very well. But pending verification, I am issuing a temporary restraining order. Mr. George Dawson is to have no contact with Ethan or Ms. Paula until a final ruling is made." "What?" George shot up, slamming his hand on the table. "I'm his father. I have rights." "Sit down immediately," the judge barked. "If you continue to be disruptive, I will have you removed by law enforcement." George's face turned red, eyes blazing with fury. Paula instinctively hugged her son tighter. As the hearing ended, Daniel looked at her and exhaled. "You did it. You got your son away from him. At least for now." But that afternoon, as Paula was gathering documents in Helen's apartment, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She hesitated. Then answered. "You think this is over?" George's voice was low and more dangerous than ever. "You want a fight? I'll show you what a fight really is. I know where you are. You can't hide forever." A chill ran down her spine. "Stay away from my son. You've already lost everything." "I haven't lost a damn thing." "But you're about to." Then he hung up. Paula immediately called Daniel. "George is threatening me. He says he knows where I am. Lock the doors. Don't open for anyone. I'm calling the police now. From now on, you're not to leave the house alone." Paula locked every door, pulled the curtains shut, and held Ethan close. She stayed like that until nightfall. A real storm was coming. But she was ready. After the threatening call, Paula felt completely drained. She sat dazed in the borrowed apartment, gripping the phone like it might ring again at any moment. Outside, the first rain of the season started to fall. A rain that should have brought peace only made her feel colder. Daniel arrived that same evening, bringing with him a police officer named Lieutenant Walker, assigned under an emergency protection order. "From now on, someone will be stationed in this area," Walker said, scanning the small space. But you shouldn't stay here long. He knows your location now. He's reckless, capable of anything. So, where do I go? I found a temporary shelter. A confidential women's protection center about a 40-minute drive from here. Only a few people know the location. It's completely secure. Paula was silent for a moment. Then nodded. How soon can we leave? Tonight. Emily came to see them off. She hugged Paula tightly, eyes brimming. You have to live, Paula. Not just survive. Live. Start again. Don't let him win. I won't. I promise. Ethan, exhausted, rested his head on his mother's shoulder and fell asleep. Paula looked at her son and whispered. We're leaving soon, baby. Far away from the place that scared you. The unmarked black car drove them through empty streets to a low building with high walls and a triple-locked gate. Inside, a few young women quietly walked with their children. An elderly woman named Isabella, the center's manager, welcomed them. This is a safe place. No one will find you here. You can stay as long as you need. Paula nodded, unable to speak. The next days passed in a heightened state of alert. Even without George physically present, his voice still echoed in her dreams, you will have nothing. During the day, Paula called Helen to bring the remaining box of documents from the old apartment to Daniel. In it were pages documenting that George had previously been accused of abuse 4 years earlier, before they married. Paula had found them in an old box George had hidden in the attic, but she never thought she'd have to use them. This will be key, Daniel said. George had a prior accusation, but the case was dropped for lack of evidence. This time, it won't be. Paula gripped the phone. Could he go to jail? If the court rules child abuse occurred, yes. At minimum, a suspended sentence or a permanent restraining order. I don't want him to go to jail. I just want my son to live. And for that very reason, we have to see this through. The next hearing was set for the weekend. But this time, George didn't show up. His lawyer came alone, requesting a delay due to temporary mental health issues. Paula didn't believe it. He's planning something. George doesn't give up that easily. And just as she feared, the following day brought a shocking incident. George showed up in front of South LA Medical Center, where Paula used to work, waving a stack of papers and shouting in the street. She kidnapped my son. She's a liar. All of you are helping a lunatic. Police had to restrain him. The video went viral online. Even though Paula was in hiding, the sight of George screaming sent waves of terror through her. Daniel called that night. He shot himself in the leg during detainment. This outburst will go into his psychological file. It could be used in court to justify a permanent restraining order. Paula clenched her fists. She knew that day was drawing near, the day justice would call the name of the man who had made her and her son's life a living hell. But that night, once again, Ethan developed a high fever. The boy whimpered, clutching his head, haunted by images from the past. Mommy, don't let me go back there. I don't want to be locked in again. I'm here, baby. I won't let anyone touch you ever again. I swear. She called the center's on-call doctor. The healthcare coordinator, Eleanor Grant, a middle-aged woman, arrived to examine Ethan and reassured her. He's okay. Just a stress reaction to the trauma. He needs time and gentle therapy. No child should grow up in fear like this. Paula nodded, holding her son all night. The next morning, she made a decision. It was time to end this hell. She contacted Daniel, requesting an emergency court session to present the final body of evidence: Dr. Christopher's statement, Laura's assessment, videos, photos, and now George's public outburst. Daniel promised to push hard. You've come this far. Just a little further. That evening, Ethan woke from a long nap. He looked at his mother and softly spoke. Mom, if we get out of this, will you take me to the sea? Paula choked up. Yes. I promise. The sea is huge. No one can hurt you there. Outside, the rain had stopped. A thin beam of sunlight slipped through the crack in the door. Even though countless challenges lay ahead, Paula knew, for the first time in many long months, she had truly taken one step out of hell. The morning of the final hearing, the sky was clear after many gloomy days. Paula held Ethan's hand as they stepped out of the protection center. Her heart was in turmoil, but she no longer felt fear. The fear that had gripped her chest was now replaced by a fierce determination. No one would ever be allowed to lay a hand on her son again. Daniel was already waiting at the gate. He wore a dark blue suit, holding a folder meticulously organized, every document in order. This is everything. Daniel handed her a copy. The psychological assessment from specialist Laura, the medical reports from Dr. Christopher, documentation of George's public disturbance, and the video where he harms himself. No judge could ignore this. I'm just afraid, he still has some trick up his sleeve. No. He's out of options, Paula. You've made it to the end. This time the courtroom was more crowded, with representatives from the Child Protection Agency, a police officer, and a psychological analyst present. George didn't show up. His lawyer, a gray-haired man named Andrew Mitchell, explained his absence. George was currently undergoing treatment at a private psychiatric facility, due to mild psychosis and acute paranoia. Judge Deborah Carter, who had presided over the previous hearing, did not hide her skepticism. And you expect me to believe this is just a coincidence regarding his health status? Attorney Andrew offered a faint smile. It's a fact, Your Honor. My client is in poor condition and is not competent to attend the hearing. So do you have any objections to the evidence we've submitted? We do not object to the video. But please note, all actions occurred in a private setting. My client believes he was applying disciplinary methods aligned with his personal cultural values and beliefs. Daniel stood up immediately. Aligned with cultural values? Excuse me, Your Honor, but hitting a child, starving them, psychological abuse, forcing them to sit in the sun, or locking them out on the balcony in the rain, which part of that is considered cultural parenting? Deborah nodded and motioned for Daniel to continue. We'd also like to present a video recording of Ethan's reaction when asked about his father. Daniel opened his laptop, displaying a clip of Ethan drawing at the psychology center. Can you tell me why you don't want to go back home with your dad? Laura's gentle voice sounded in the video. Ethan held his pen and drew a locked door. Outside was rain. Inside, a boy sat huddled. Because I don't like the rain. But Dad makes me stay out there when I do something wrong. Laura's voice continued in the video. And how do you feel when you think about your dad? Ethan was silent for a moment, then quietly answered. He doesn't treat me like a real dad. In the courtroom, no one spoke. Paula sat beside Ethan, holding his hand tightly, tears streaming down her face. She no longer trembled. She only felt sorrow that for years, her child had lived in what was supposed to be a home. Judge Deborah spoke solemnly. I've reviewed all the documents, listened to every recording, and watched every video. Mr. George Dawson's actions are not only domestic violence, but they pose a serious threat to the development of a minor. Therefore, I declare the following. She paused and looked around the room. First, Mr. George Dawson is permanently stripped of all custody and visitation rights to Ethan Martin, including indirect contact via phone, mail, or third parties. Second, full custody and guardianship are granted to Ms. Paula Martin, the legal mother, with support from the Child Protection Agency as needed. Third, the case will be forwarded to the District Attorney's Office for review of potential charges of child abuse against Mr. George Dawson. The hearing ended. Silence. Then Ethan suddenly turned to his mother and smiled, a real smile, for the first time in many months. Mom, did we win? Paula hugged him tightly and nodded. Yes, my love. We don't have to be afraid anymore. Not ever again. Outside the courthouse, the sun was soft and warm. Daniel walked beside the mother and son, speaking gently. I don't know what other word to use besides proud. Paula, you fought like a true warrior. I'm just a mom. Nothing special. No. Moms like you save this world, one piece at a time. Emily ran across the street and hugged Paula tightly. You did it. Oh God, you really did it. Thank you. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have made it this far. Don't thank me. Thank yourself. Daniel jumped in, half joking, half sincere. And thank your brilliant lawyer, too. They all laughed. A laughter that burst open in the sunlight. A few days later, Paula moved into a small apartment in a peaceful suburb, near a park and a friendly elementary school. With help from Helen, Emily, and Daniel, she began her life again. No more yelling, no more watchful glares, no more locked balconies. Only warmth remained. Ethan started attending art classes twice a week, organized by a non-profit that supports children with psychological trauma. He drew a lot. Houses with roofs, roads with light, and hugs always placed in the center of the page. One day, Ethan gave his mom a drawing. In it, two people held hands on a beach, with a sunset behind them. Below, he had written in wobbly letters. Mom and me. No one hurts anymore. Paula cried. Not out of sadness. But because, for the first time in years, she truly felt, she was a good mother. A week later, Paula got news from Daniel. George was officially indicted. He's facing 2 charges, child abuse and intentional emotional harm to a family member. Even if he's not jailed, he'll be under strict supervision and permanently banned from contacting anyone in the family. I thought he was getting psychiatric treatment. He only did that to buy time. But he didn't expect you to be this persistent. He's lost, Paula. I don't hate him anymore, Daniel. I just don't want anyone else to go through what I did. That's exactly why you're strong. Hatred breaks people. But forgiveness, or at least letting go, lets us keep living. I'll never forget. But I won't let it define me. Daniel smiled. He looked at the woman in front of him, not the timid nurse who used to fear her husband's gaze, but a mother standing firm in life, protecting her child at all costs. If you want, he said, Emily said you can come back to the medical center. They really need people. And she misses you a lot. I miss everyone too. Especially, those quick lunch breaks with her. And that terrible coffee she used to make. That part is definitely true, Daniel laughed. Paula returned to work a week later. Everyone welcomed her like someone coming back from a storm. She saw eyes filled with empathy, sincere words of care, and something else, respect. No one mentioned George. No one needed to. Because everyone knew she had overcome. The following month, Ethan was selected to participate in a town-wide children's art exhibition. He brought a painting with the words, Mom and me. Wherever Mom is, that's home. At the ceremony, the host, Ethan's art teacher, invited him up to say a few words. Ethan took the microphone, heart pounding. My name is Ethan. I want to dedicate this painting to my mom. Because I used to live in a place without laughter. But my mom got me out. She told me the ocean is big, and no one can hurt me there. And she kept her promise. Down below, Paula cried. She didn't need any other reward in life. That night, before bed, Ethan turned to his mother and asked, Mom, can I ask one last thing? Of course, sweetheart. Do you regret it? Leaving? Paula stayed silent for a moment. I regret not leaving sooner. Ethan nodded. He snuggled into his mother's arms and whispered, I love you, Mom. I love you too. More than anything in the world. The next morning, sunlight flooded the small apartment. Paula opened the window, letting in the cool breeze of the new day. She lifted her face, feeling the sun rise radiant and warm. No more George. No more crying in the middle of the night. No more cold kitchens or meaningless slaps. Just the two of them. Free. Truly living for the first time after so many years of being chained by fear. She whispered to herself. From today on, only light. The story of Paula and Ethan is a powerful testament that a mother's love can overcome even the darkest fears. It teaches us that silence in the face of abuse is never the answer, and that courage doesn't mean the absence of fear but rising up even while trembling. When a mother defends her child with all her love and resilience, she can change destiny itself. And above all, justice, even if it comes late, can still light up life from the darkest place.
If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.